Welcome to MHA 630. In this course we're going to talk about performance improvement in healthcare. This is a very important course in the curriculum. As we go through healthcare management and learn about the business side of the operation and the accounting side of the operation, we tend to start to focus nearly exclusively on administrative and financial affairs. And like it or not, we tend to forget about the humanistic side of the medical field. This is one course where we can bring both of those two sides together. We can incorporate the business side and the healthcare side in one venue and actually make improvements that will benefit both. As you're going to see as we go through this course, performance improvement is of tremendous value to patient care and patient outcomes, but it is also of tremendous value to the spreadsheets and the financial statements. If we do performance improvement and we do it effectively, we not only improve patient care, but we also make our business operation more efficient, more cost effective, more cost efficient. So this is one of those few areas in the healthcare industry or the healthcare business where doing the right thing can actually benefit us from a financial point of view also. In this course we're going to be talking about performance assessment and improvement. As you're going to see over the next few slides, healthcare is a little bit different from most other businesses and industries when it comes to performance improvement. Healthcare is one of those few fields where customers don't know anything about the service they're being provided. They are completely dependent upon healthcare providers not only to do the treatment, but also to do the assessment and to determine if any improvement is needed in the treatment they provide. We're going to spend a good bit of time in this module talking about the work of W. Edwards Deming. Deming was an American statistician who basically created a new way of looking at process improvement. And while his initial interests were in the area of statistical analysis and automobile improvement, his general idea has morphed into a number of performance improvement systems, one being healthcare. And his philosophy, his way of thinking, is worthy of some serious discussion when it comes to performance improvement in healthcare. One of Deming's main premises was that quality should be built into the process and not be an afterthought that was checked for at the end of the process. Ford Motors hired him to do some work for them and basically seized upon that idea. In fact, they created a very effective marketing program with a slogan, "The quality goes in before the name goes on." And that was a one-sentence summary basically of Deming's whole methodology. And that methodology was to make sure that each part of the assembly process was done correctly each time it was done. And that way you really didn't have to worry about the product at the end of the process because it was already taken care of during the process. And that same thought pattern can carry over to healthcare very effectively. One of the biggest obstacles to performance improvement is resistance to change. People generally want to do the right thing, but they get so ingrained in doing the same old that they've been doing for weeks or months, or perhaps even years, it's difficult for them to turn loose to make the change. So when we're talking about performance improvement, we have to go through a series of events in order to enact a change. Kurt Lewin, who is considered one of the experts on change theory, used a three-step model. You first have to unfreeze the change, which means you have to get people to consider the fact that change might be a good thing. You have to convince them to stop doing the old way. Step 2, according to Lewin, is you make the change. You enact the policy. You enact the new program. And then step number 3 is you do refreezing, which means you put policies and procedures in place to keep employees doing the new desired behavior. John Kotter utilizes a slightly more complex change model. In his model, the first step has to be to establish a sense of urgency. Until people see a serious need to make a change, they're not going to see any reason to modify their behaviors. So this sense of urgency has to precede any effort to make a change. The second step is to create a guiding coalition. And what that means is basically getting leadership to buy into the change, getting people on board who will have the ability to make the change. And this coalition should consist of management, but also should consist of people at the working level. For example, in healthcare, if we were trying to change a nursing policy, we would want administration on board, but we'd also want some of the staff nurses on board to help implement that change. Next, we want to develop a vision and a strategy. The most important thing here is that this is a vision that can be shared by those people in the department who are going to be making the change. They have to be able to see what it is we're trying to do. They have to understand it, and most importantly, they have to buy into it. The next step is to communicate that change to all participants. Now we're going to roll out the change in policy. We're going to get everybody to come in to have a meeting with us. We're going to show them what it is we're trying to do, to explain why it's so important. And this will extend to all levels in the organization or the department where the change is going to be taking place. Next, we empower those involved to make the needed changes. We can't do everything from the top down. We have to have participation, meaningful participation from all levels within the organization or the department where the change is taking place. We have to also give the needed authority to those people at key positions who can make the change. Next, we want to identify and highlight reaching short-term goals. We're setting many steps here so that we can make the change incrementally. And just as important is each time we make an incremental change, we have to recognize the accomplishment and give out the appropriate approbation to those people who have been key to getting the change made. Next, we want to consolidate the gains and use them to springboard to the next needed change. That basically is what we just talked about. We want to give approbation when it's appropriate, reward people appropriately, and then use that to build momentum to jump to the next step. Finally, we make long-term cultural changes to maintain the momentum. What this means is basically we are using the Kurt Lewin model, we're refreezing. We are making the change permanent. We're putting into place those policies, procedures, cultural beliefs, whatever, that we need to continue the change on a long-term basis. Much of this module has focused on W. Edwards Deming and his works. Since that's what we've learned about, that's what we're going to do the assignment on. As you go through this assignment, I want you to really do some good background reading and research. Try to get a feel for what Deming was thinking and what he was trying to accomplish. And then as you go through this, I want you to gradually take what he did and kind of morph that into something that applies more explicitly for healthcare, and convert his process, his thought process, into a healthcare process. That shouldn't be as hard as it initially sounds. If you do the background readings, there's a good bit of literature out there, CQI literature, where they make reference to TQM and they make reference to Deming, and they talk about how the points in CQI relate to or evolved from the points that Deming made in his TQM process.